The talent I'm joined with today has literally left smiles and tears, I think, in every 90s kid's eyes and face. Um, I included in as part of that, and I'm extremely grateful to have this wonderful talent with us who has not only had her roots in television, but has also made some wonderful work in Marathi cinema and films generally as well. And that is, of course, Renuka Shahane. So thank you so much, Renuka, for joining us on Filme Shilmy. It's so wonderful to have
My
you.
pleasure. Same here. I love giving interviews. I love talking to people like you who are interested in films.
Well, the pleasure is honestly really ours. I cannot tell you enough because it feels very surreal because just a few days ago we came back from watching the re-release of Hum Aapke Hain Koun, and so
Yes.
many emotions resurfaced. I mean, this was like what, 31 years.
Yeah, 30 years ago. Yeah.
I mean, now when you look back, I mean, there must be so many emotions that you feel. I mean, you've been asked about Pooja so many times. So I was like, how do I find a dangle that is different? But I think nothing ever beats an internal process. So
That's true.
how do you deal or react with the you now versus the you back then?
Um, I guess there are a lot of things that have changed. Obviously, I hope that I've become wiser with age. But I think I was pretty mature even at the time when I was doing Hum Aapke Hain Kaun because I had finished my post-graduation before really doing films. So, and there was no social media at that time. So, that pressure wasn't there to do things quickly and to achieve something very fast. So, it was a very slow process in a way. And also, when the impact of what we had done reached us, it was like it reached after a bit of time. So at that time when the film was released, we actually didn't know that it would carry this impact, and definitely not over so many years.
Hmm.
So when I look back at the film, and I really find that time when we were actually shooting and also doing all the other activities, post production, etc., about the film. Why it was so special. And I had thought that at that time because I was like, practically new to the world of film. So I thought, obviously, the first time that you act in a Hindi film or a film as big as this is always very special. So I thought that it had something to do with that I was new. And so everything was, I was like Alice in Wonderland. And there were so many huge stars that I was acting with. So it was practically surreal that I was part of that film. And then the impact that the character had on people, it kind of, that was a slow process where people wrote letters. People wherever they met me were so warm. They welcomed me like a part of their family, and it has continued over such a long period of time. So I think that the film was special. It was not special because it was my first film, but it was really truly special because of the warmth, the family, which is our crux as Indians, and I think that warmth permeates even across generations.
Hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's interesting though, isn't it? Because I feel like the character is so iconic in its own way. And I feel like because it's one of those characters where mm, it was very sincere and it came from a good place of innocence where I think people have just
Yeah,
automatically connected. I think everyone has suddenly started seeing you as the sister, as the bahu, as the sister. You're suddenly become
that's true.
suddenly had become a household name per se,
Yes,
which we
that's
then
true.
saw later on in like the subsequent television roles with like when the
Right,
Kabhi Bahu Thi or Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki would come on, they would affiliate with that character.
right.
But
Yeah,
Renuka, I
yeah.
have to ask, it's beautiful, and I think the reactions that you get, this is beautiful. But has it ever been a point for you where it kind of, I mean, I don't want to use the word hindrance, but slight,
Hmm,
um, where you become trapped in that image? Do you feel like there's ever been
right.
that notion as well?
Um, I don't think that it ever trapped me, but yes, I must say that people who cast, actors, can never think that I could play anything with gray shades or anything, which is unkind. you know so in that sense it's very restrictive, because as an actor I would like to play all sorts of characters, and it took casting directors and directors to place me in that role after many many years after Hum Aapke Hain Koun was released. The impact of that role was so big
Mm.
that even the roles that I got on television pretty much were, of girls who were girls next door, who were relatable, who were very much part of Indian value system. And, so the roles that came to me didn't go beyond that. But to tell you frankly, I didn't mind.
Yeah, no, of course. Of course.
Yeah, I didn't mind being typecast, because somewhere I have to say that the choice that I made um, in the roles that I took even prior to Pooja Chaudhary, and even after that, it actually was something that I really, really wanted to play. So within that, what do you say, daira, within that framework of a relatable Indian girl, there were so many possibilities, and there were so many fabulous roles that were offered to me at that time, especially on television, that I didn't really miss the gray shades at all.
Mhm. Now, I'm gonna rewind back to you, sort of saying that this was your first sort of experience of doing a
Yes,
film of this nature. Now, if we look at Pooja, for me, she represents um ideal people of today. I'm not gonna bracket her as a woman
yeah,
or that
yeah,
gender band is not necessary. Just as a person,
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
he was someone who was living in contemporary times but had a very strong value system. And I think this sort of effervescence that she brought to the character, do you think because you also were quite innocent to acting of nature, do you think that really helped really mold her into the way she actually eventually became? I mean, of course, Suraji must have done a great job, of
Oh
course.
yes. Oh yes. I mean I would give the entire credit to him and to Raj Babuji, because Raj Babuji, Surajji's father,
Yeah.
used to always be on the set, and he is really very, very good with nuances within the script.
Mm.
And the gentleness of being is something that I just experienced being with the Rajshris. Like, I mean, literally, you don't get people like this ever.
Mm.
And when I first met them and I heard them speak, and my experience otherwise with people from the industry was not of gentleness, you know, or of, let's say, grace. So that was a bit of a pleasant shock to me. And I kept thinking that, okay, this is the first meeting, the second meeting. I think they're being very nice to me. And, this ye naqab utrega type, cynical sort of Mumbaikar.
Yeah.
But that never happened, because that was them. That is their ethos. That's why they make the films that they make. And I, on the set, when I saw Surajji's mother, I think that really inspired me to play Pooja in that manner, because I think Surajji also, I mean, he was inspired by the women in his family
Mm.
when he wanted to portray the ideal sort of bhabhi in Hum Aapke Hain Kaun. So when I observed her and I saw the incredible, any time of the day, there was absolutely such grace, such a pleasantness, surrounding her, the way she would talk to everybody around her also. So I think that was, for me, the, if I could nail that part of Pooja Chaudhary, which I think Surajji wanted to portray, that would be a winner. And I think that that's whenever there was something that didn't quite match with Surajji's concept of Pooja, he would, come up to me and guide me about it. That no, it should not be, over here, or this expression shouldn't be like this. So I think it was entirely his credit, that I was guided through the film, and the narration itself that he gave me an idea, because he actually acts out the entire script. So
Mm.
I knew how Salman would talk. I knew how Madhuri would talk. I knew, so all the characters were already alive. for me with the narration. So it it needed just very little instructions on the set for us to, achieve what we did in Hum Aapke Hain Kaun. But yes, full credit to Suraj.
No, I'm glad you mentioned about this whole thing where he would give you that close guidance and that
Yes,
how to really perfect the character.
right. Yeah,
Would you, I mean, I'm sure you've probably been asked about set experiences and behind the scenes stuff, but I would love to know maybe something that might not be public knowledge or might not be very well known because I think ऐसे फिल्मों में ऐसा होता है कि बहुत सारे किस्से होते हैं like but
yeah.
so very spontaneous, right? My idea is I think there was one scene where I think just after ये मौसम का जादू, I think where Salman is and Madhuri are going to do matha take to the in the mandir, and I think
Hmm.
Salman accidentally misses the ghanti. I presume that that was probably a spontaneous shot. I don't know for sure, but it just looks spontaneous with the way he was
Yeah.
laughing and everything. So I'm sure there must be a lot of spontaneous moments in the film,
Uh,
especially with you. Was there any? And if there was, could you kindly share some of those experiences?
I mean, there are a whole lot of experiences, of course, with Hum Aapke Hain Kaun. I mean, just to watch Madhuri perfecting her dance moves. I mean, for us, she's like the goddess of dance, and expressions. And when she was performing, she would want to do better, and she would ask our choreographer whether she could do another take of this particular thing, and all of us would say, "Why, it's so perfect." And then she would do it, and there would always be that little extra that she added, which would make it even more perfect. So, the kind of professionalism she had was such a pleasure to witness. Also, in terms of the atmosphere on the set, because we had all become very close to each other. None of us really used to leave the set and go to our makeup vans, and that culture wasn't there also at that time. There were makeup rooms. We didn't have vans, but people would be on the set most of the time. So I think that really added to the hasi mazak and the jokes and the dumb charades and everything that we played. But there was this one particular scene after Pooja's death
Mm.
that there's everybody is in white and there's a picture of me, and Lakshmikant Bede's character Lalu is crying and saying how could this happen, and that scene. So Sahila Chadda was there, and everybody was there in the family. They were very, very serious, and I was called in later in the afternoon, so I had got ready. I went to the set thinking, "Okay, I'll see how the shooting is going." And I was busy there smiling at everybody, crying their hearts out. When they kind of looked at me and said, "अरे ये तो यहाँ पर बैठ के हंस रही है," they all shooed me away. जाओ अंदर. We don't need you to be. We're trying to do our job. And also after the scene in the hospital after Pooja passes away, Rima Lagu was inconsolable. She
Mm.
was this really affected her so deeply that there are sometimes that actors, you know, uh, because of the emotions that you have to be true to, you go through those emotions, really the kind of things that you have to imagine to kind of hit those emotions at that time. um, she must have kind of really felt the death of a child, and she was inconsolable, and it took her quite some time to kind of come back to normal and to accept the fact that yes, this is a character and this character has died. And so these were like beautiful moments at the end of the film. After each actor, they had packed up for the entire, wrapped up for the entire film. सूरज जी would play the song तुमसे जुदा होकर हमें दूर जाना है, and God, there were tears and tears and tears because it was so difficult, after 150 days of shooting together, doing so many memorable sort of scenes, and it was very tough. And the entire, the lightmen on the tarapas and everybody, all the technicians would clap for you, and what a feeling that is. So, and that's the grace of Rajshri production.
No, for sure. I mean, such beautiful memories. I read up actually
Yeah,
about the whole Rima ji feeling really in
yeah,
like I read up on
yeah,
the IMDb page actually, or the trivia page, and it was very
yeah.
God, yeah. It's interesting actually. You mentioned Rima Laguji because I feel it was a very strong Maharashtrian flavor. Actually, now thinking
Yes.
about it.
The three of us, Madhuri, Rima, and I.
Well, no, also Salman
And
and
also, uh,
Mohinisha as well.
yeah,
So,
that's true.
like you literally
Yeah,
had
and
such a
Lakshmikant.
Lakshmi Kanji as well. So it was very very I felt that Maharashtrian flavor actually a lot more
In
than
fact, we used to joke on the set, Lakshmikant used to always say that, the amount of time that we have to wait for the change of lighting or the change in scene. He would say that let's make a Marathi film. All of us are there. Let's make another Marathi film while we are waiting for the shot. So yeah, it was quite a big presence there, and it was also one of the factors which made me feel very comfortable. Though I was new to such a big set, it was, I think, Lakshmikant, Reema and Madhuri's mom. Madhuri's mom used to be on the set. So she used to make me so comfortable. Like, she used to always call me in Madhuri's makeup room, chat, and, uh, you need to break ice after all, because this is the first time that you're going to meet everybody, and you have to be as if you've been sisters for ages. So I think all these people had a big role to play in my being comfortable on the set.
Hmm. And I'll tell you what, it's not, it's of course the ensemble I mean, this is literally one of the finest examples of ensemble casting in Hindi cinema, Indian cinema generally. But I think also what I've come to realize is, a lot of people, especially the pseudo woke on there on Twitter and on social media, they kind of a lot of them kind of look back at such films and they call it, they use the terms regressive. They call it very
Mm,
cringe. These are the sort of terms I'm saying. And what they don't realize is actually for the time that it released, and I only realized this after I did watch the film again, is how inclusive
mm.
the film is. Um,
Yes,
it looks
that
at
is
love
true.
from different angles, right? You have inclusion, not just about, I mean, you've got the animal love, of course, the love of the divine, which we see when Krishnji sort of shines
Yes,
light on Taffy. Oh, what a beautiful scene that was.
right.
Love with sisters, between romantic love, of course, but also
Right.
it tackles gender stereotypes as well, very subtly, if you think about it, right? Because that whole Didi
Yes.
Tera Devar Divana scene when Salman is wearing that out, I think Madhuri had dressed him or something, right? As I was
Yeah, yeah. Did his makeup.
right. So if you think about that, then even in Diktana, the second version, when the baby,
Right.
you have the you have the transgender community also there,
Oh,
but
yes. Yeah.
they're not fobbed off like how you usually
No,
see them in Hindi films.
that's
They
true.
were part of the celebration,
Very respectful. Very respectful.
and people don't realize how progressive this was. I mean, as
Yeah, I agree.
as much as I kind of have been sort of analyzing and sort of looking at the social connotations, have you had that realization as well as an artist, many, many years after watching the film again and revisiting those memories?
I think, yes, you're right. Even at that time, a lot of people said that, how regressive it is for girl who's studied and who is, just to be a housewife and, kind of where Pooja was concerned, of course. And my take was the fact that, both, in fact, all the women, even my mother, like Reema's G's role, the kind of voice that they have throughout is something that even very, very progressive films very often don't.
Hmm.
So Hum Aapke Hain Koun actually ticks a lot of boxes that a lot of progressive films don't for women.
Yeah.
Like, many supposedly progressive films somehow box the woman, and there is a sort of, what do you say, exploitation of the women's emancipation. in a very different way. I don't know whether I've been able to put it in
I
words, but
mm,
you know what? So it's almost like a titillation of some kind, uh, using the fact that they are empowered and they are emancipated. So in a progressive film, the male gaze still stays, and in Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, that male gaze is a very gentle gaze.
mm,
So the way the male is gazing at women is not of the stalker kind
yeah.
of romance that is so normal to see in Hindi film or Indian film, but it is of, or neither is it a titillation. They're all extremely respectful, graceful, also at each and every time. Like if you take Didi Tera Devar Divana, you know, Salman is asking for punishment for what he has done. He is, kind of digressed a
Yeah.
certain rule, and he has to be punished by it. Also, women are asked that do you want to go ahead with this relationship or not? It is always something that uh, it's not forced on
Mm,
them. So the choice is what they make. Now, what is feminism if it is not choice?
exactly.
If you make a certain choice, and if the choice is not dictated by patriarchal structures or whatever it is,
Mm,
then then is it not a progressive film? Is it not a progressive thought?
absolutely.
So the kind of, see, now in a regressive film, what you will see is a woman toiling in the house and nobody appreciating her. Here, she's toiling, but everybody is appreciating her.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
there is a grace, there's a thankfulness, there's a gratitude. So there is a difference. So I disagree when people say that it's a regressive film, and I think that the warmth and that feeling that it carries, if it was a regressive film, it would have had an expiration date.
Yeah, exactly. So true. Very honestly, very well articulated. And I often see also some people also making dumb statements like I don't believe in feminism, but who's gonna tell
No,
them
I
that
believe very
feminism is
strongly
equality?
for
Feminism
both
is
men and women, a
वही
choice
तो
for both men and women.
I literally
It's
look at certain statements and I'm like, are you sure you actually know the definition of that word?
exactly. I just don't get it.
And also, can I just say, I really could not help but like just admire how gorgeous Madhuri also. Like I loved her outfits also.
Yeah,
Very
she's
stunning.
just she's
Oh,
so I mean, literally on the set when she came down in that purple sari,
oh, oh, oh.
everybody was just gawking like, no,
And
it's
for its time,
difficult
it
to
was
put
very
our
expensive.
jaws back.
Huh? And for
Yeah,
the time, it was very expensive from what I read.
yeah, yeah. But wasn't it worth it?
It's so worth it. For me, my favorite outfit, I think for me was what she wore in Pehla Pehla Pyar hai. That pink and
The
the
pink,
it was proper Lady
yeah,
Diana vibe. I
gorgeous,
was like, oh, loved it. Absolutely loved it.
yeah.
Right. The next part focus on in Hum Aapke Hain Koun, unfortunately, I think for me has literally traumatized all of us as kids. On no,
I know.
honestly, Renuka ma'am, there was literally a point where I literally had to turn off Hum Aapke Hain Koun after.
Oh,
Even I remember when the song was playing in the cinema, I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no. I can't.
yeah,
It was so
yeah,
hard to watch. It's very difficult to digest that sort
yeah.
of. But
A
I think
lot of people still tell me that they, now when they see it on TV, of course, not in a theater situation, but they say that they switch off at that point because they know what's coming. So, yeah, it has traumatized a lot of people because it comes very suddenly.
hmm,
It comes after a high of, kind of this dance, this celebration. And she's, really wanting to tell her husband this good news. And it's just something that you don't think of.
hmm.
And in fact, there's a trivia there where earlier she was supposed to kind of lose her balance because of the kid's toy,
Oh,
the baby's toy, which has fallen there. And
hmm,
there was this discussion, and Surajji said, no, we won't keep that. Let's keep the carpet. Let's see how it works out in a way that it looks natural. So she trips first and she, kind of um, uh, catches herself. And the next moment she actually trips.
My God.
So that's something that, people don't expect because she slipped and she looks at the carpet and, kind of catches her balance and then she loses it again immediately. So that's something that there was a discussion because he didn't want any negativity towards the baby. Imagine, there's such a lot of thought that अरे वो बच्चे का खिलौना नहीं होना चाहिए because, that negativity will be attached to the child, the toy of the child. So these are the, very minute things that were a point of discussion at that time. And in fact, Surajji used to know the continuity of each and every character, each and every bangle that I wore, he knew.
Wow.
And there was a time when, in fact, the our costume designer had not given me the set of bangles the way they were worn. So I had worn a few here and there. He noticed and he asked me to go back and wear them in the proper way. What a perfectionist, I tell you.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
it's interesting because I think that scene because obviously like you said it is so unexpected, but
yeah,
like how you mentioned that scene as well earlier where you came and you were laughing and obviously that became a bit of a distraction, but when you are
yeah,
shooting something like like the whole Locha Lime wala scene, um obviously for you at that point in time, you weren't gonna know that it was gonna have such a lasting pop culture
no,
effect or such a long
no,
lasting emotional effect on the audiences. Um,
no.
so how did you go about it? What was your mental process like? Because eventually, it comes to a point in an actor's life as well, when especially on a film like this, where there's so many happiness and there's so much joy, but then to finally confront the inevitable death,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
mourning.
right.
I would love to know your process, your mental process behind that,
You
actually.
know, what I feel is that whether in life or whether as a role, unless you are going through a very painful death on screen, I'm saying, unless that happens, if it's immediate, then actually the effect of that is felt much more by the people you leave behind than what happens to that person itself. Because in a way, the person doesn't exist to feel. So uh, there isn't anything else beyond that. So it's for the people who are left behind in the film, who had to play this very tricky thing because there's a wedding which comes very soon between Monish ji and Madhuri's character. So how to go from this very, very difficult death onto that. So that I think in terms of the filmmaker, it was a challenge. As an actor, I would say that for me, that scene was very difficult to perform in the hospital. Not the CD ka scene, because I think that was made pretty easy. It's an action scene. So there
Mm.
was an action director, and it was directed in bits and parts. Um, and I had a double who would roll down the entire staircase.
Whoa.
Yeah. But of course, there was a patch which I had to roll down from. And Surajji was very particular about making it comfortable for me. So, in fact, I had to really act as if I was being, hurt because it was actually made of sponge.
Yeah, correct.
So, I had to act as if my head was hitting the staircase.
Yeah.
So, and they had this um, kind of a wooden board, like a skateboard sort of thing, on which I was placed. And, I was pulled down the staircase in one of the scenes. And then of course, I had to roll over. So it's a very technical thing. So you don't have time to think. You're just doing the action. And doing action is not very easy, but at least you have people who are like, certified action directors, stunt people who are there to help you out. The real test was in the hospital, and Surajji couldn't use the shot that he wanted because I just couldn't shut my eyes. So my eyes kept flickering. Because if somebody says you have to shut your eyes, you can't. And Surajji couldn't even say, ma'am, you have to die properly.
अरे मरना है यार.
Please, please. But so ultimately, it was this, kind of half closed eyes where he ended my part of it and then went on to the faces of the others, to show that, yeah, like she's passed. But that was something which was so difficult for me to do. My eyeballs kept moving, my lashes kept flickering. So these technical things, sometimes you don't realize that it's easy to do drama, it's easy to do comedy, it's easy to do things that, have interaction with other actors. But these things, like this technical thing that you have to shut your eyes and look dead, that
Mm,
was very, very difficult for me to do. But the impact, I must say, from I think especially for very young children and very middle-aged and old people, the impact of Pooja's death was really felt
mm.
so much that wherever I went after that, people would, kind of be touching me, blessing me, saying "कितना अच्छा लग रहा है आप जिंदा हो," that kind of
Oh.
thing. And because I really felt for the character. And the first time I saw the film in Liberty with an audience, and people were howling at the death, and I was like, "What has just happened?" Like,
Mm.
So yeah, the impact was felt very deeply.
Like I told you also, my dadaji apparently, my dad had told me,
Yeah.
he literally got up and like in Gujarati he was like "Ubhi re," which means wait,
Oh yes.
संभाल के जरा चलो. And obviously because I think because and they were like dad, it's just a film, calm down. But
Yeah.
I think because
Yeah.
I think he kind of saw his family and his bahu
Yeah.
Pooja, like I mentioned to you earlier, it's that sense of familiarity and the warmth which I think runs
Yeah.
the entire team,
Yeah.
like into the entire cast. And I think it's that innocence, and I feel like, Salman, I mean, I've always said Salman, for me, from what I've understood of him and from speaking with him especially, at length, is something that he's always had like this whole little boy lost kind of vibe going. I think in him,
Yeah.
his films, and even in Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, there's that whole sense of Mera Bachpan Anjana. I think there's a line in Diktana,
Yeah.
and you can
Yes.
see that even in the end of the film as well, where he's kind of trying to celebrate his brother's wedding to his with Nish.
Right.
You could see that
Yeah.
sense of like loss of innocence and innocence. So I
Yeah.
think for you, as someone who also was feeling that at the same time, I would love to explore that innocence perspective, especially with someone like Salman.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, in a way, you both were kind of in a similar place, I would like to,
Yes.
emotionally and mentally.
Yeah, I think so because he's he has a great sense of humor. He's very mischievous on the set. Also because Rajshi is like his home,
Yeah.
so he could be very comfortable there. Surajji and he share such a beautiful relationship that uh, there's nobody judging him there. I think that uh, whether Madhuri or whether Salman, they were so it was like their home ground. So they could be themselves. They could be their innocent selves, and not have guards like or defenses, which perhaps they would carry on other sets
Mm,
because there's a lot of weight on people who play the lead actor and actress. There's a lot riding on them. So um, I think that that innocence that the Rajshri production itself has percolates from the producers to everybody as part of it. And I think at that age also, all of us, I think we're at an age where we were old enough to make certain mature decisions, but at the same very, very young and innocent and carefree. And um, it was also, I think, in general, the age of innocence.
mm,
We hadn't hit the 2000s yet. uh, the computer hadn't played such a big part in our lives, so it was pre those very major changes in technology and communication. So I think all in all, we were very comfortable. We were okay being ourselves,
mm.
there were those guards weren't up as yet. which I think came up, afterwards, where even journalism became more and more intrusive in a way, and only the negative parts of people's lives were more important rather than the positive, the kind of evolving, the general discussions about craft. All these things took a backseat. But when we were doing Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, I think all of that existed. So the nostalgia is for Hum Aapke Hain Kaun is also for that part of our world that
Mm.
we've left behind forever. That's never going to come back.
It's not gonna ever come back, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's why I felt a little I had a bit of a lump in throat actually whilst watching it because I mean I watched Hum Aapke Hain Kaun way after because I was born in 95. But
Oh,
I could still kind of connect with some parts of the 90s because we've
hmm.
right. So
Yes,
I think that's what really felt. And the dynamics, life, it's really changed. And I just think it's
yeah,
that's why such films are really comforting now because we have that. Right. Let's do
exactly.
a time warp and let's come back to
Mm.
contemporary. Because Hekon is a beautiful memory and that will always continue to be fresh. But you've been busy with some very interesting projects recently as well.
Yes,
I
yes,
will come on to that. But I think what I would be nice to know is because a big step for you in your career was directing a film,
yes,
Tribhang. Now Tribhang was a very we were talking about feminism earlier, and it really does focus on a very dysfunctional sort of mother-daughter relationship, a
true.
complete antithesis of what we saw in Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, which you were a part of.
Yes,
So for you, when making a film, how much of um growing up influences and perhaps your even earlier influences as well in acting, as well as Hum Aapke Hain
yeah.
Kaun, played a big
Mm.
role in the way you shaped Tribhang? And how satisfied were you with the overall project?
For me, Tribhanga came from a very, very uh, deep place in myself because I was trying to portray the antithesis of the relationship that I share with my mother. I
Hmm.
mean, for me, my mother is a central force in my life. And she's my philosopher, my friend, my sister, sometimes my daughter now, like she's 85 now. And um, I, whatever I am or whoever I am, I'm made by her. So I was trying to see that if this like focus of my life was actually not a very pleasant thing, or maybe that a mother-daughter, the central person in one's life, if that person and I didn't get along, then what? So
Hmm.
that it was a place that I felt that I should explore, and also the three generations where Nayan is this, absolutely intellectual, cerebral kind of person who's deep into her writing and in taking certain decisions and living with no regret. Anu, her daughter, is sort of considered a black sheep in a way with her choices of, this commercial Hindi film, but at the same time, Odissi, classical dance, that kind of choices that she has made, certainly regarding her daughter, Masha, not having a man in her life, but having many boyfriends and stuff like that. And Masha, who's you know, the 90s kid who wants a very traditional, normal family for her. So these were the three things that I wanted to deal with, almost like an ego, super ego, this Abhanga, Samabhanga, Tribhanga. So the concept of these three, the three different angles, I wanted to explore. And since my background is clinical psychology, I think I wanted to explore it in terms of these types of women who are never seen very often in our uh, industry, unfortunately. Um, Women-centric films are also like there'll be a certain heroine who almost takes on the role of the macho man. Like she's a type of macho man. Like
Hmm.
sometimes Sri Devi ji used to play the roles, it could have been a man, but actually Sri Devi ji is playing that role. So I wanted to explore certain gray shades in relationships, in women, in their thought process, which I think the script um, was found to be very powerful, and luckily I got Kajol to play Anu, and that's how the wheels turned. And I had Siddharth Malhotra to back the film. He was such a good producer. So, but if you ask me, I'm extremely critical of my work, whether as an actress or whether as a director. So, as a director, I thought that I could have done much better with Tribhanga, with the matter that I had. Um, but one lives and learns. Also, I love the impact it has made on a lot of not just women, but a lot of men also. And the response that I got was so incredible. I didn't expect that.
Hmm.
So the audience always surprises you. I always feel that one should never dumb down whatever one has to say for
Hmm.
people, because there are so many people waiting to be challenged, waiting to have something to think about, even to disagree.
Hmm.
But something, which is different from, say, what they've seen before. So
Hmm.
that's something, a lot of that I got, a lot of that kind of response I got for Tribhanga from men as well as women. And a lot of women saw it, three generations of women seeing it together. So that kind of thing was very heartwarming to hear.
Hmm.
But that wasn't my first film, actually. My first film was a Marathi film called Rita,
Of course. Yeah.
which had Pallavi Joshi and Jackie Shroff in the main role.
Yes.
And that was released sometime in 2009, September 2009.
Hmm.
And that was based on my mother's novel, Rita Virenkar, which she had written in Marathi in 1993.
Hmm.
So this was my second direction. But direction was something that I have already always wanted to do, much more than acting, actually.
Hmm.
Acting was an accident, but direction was my passion, because in 1988, I was assisting Vijay Mehta in a serial called Lifeline, which
Okay.
we shot, yeah, which we shot on film. And I was the fourth assistant. I was the costume assistant, and this whole process of watching Vijay direct Pankaj Kapoor, Tanvi Azmi, A.K. Hangal, Ila Arun, K.K. Raina. I, I mean, it was just amazing, that experience. It just ignited that passion for direction and telling stories behind the camera. And that just stayed with me. And I think because acting happened, Surabhi happened, anchoring happened. So, and there was a lot of popularity, and I was, kind of getting beautiful roles one after the other on television. It didn't give me enough time to kind of go back to my passion, but it was only after I got married, had children, that my husband reminded me that, hey, this is something that you've always wanted to do, and maybe now's the time.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's how, yeah, yeah. And Tribhanga was written over a very long period of time, because I'm like a tortoise, I tell you, where scripting is concerned, it takes forever.
But it's fine. That means you win the race eventually, though. So that's a good.
That's nice to know.
No, definitely. But no, it's interesting you mentioned your husband. Honestly, I cannot tell you, अगर आपकी फिल्म का मोमेंट ने मेरे को ट्रॉमा दिया है, तो फिर आपके हस्बैंड के रोल्स ने मेरे को ट्रॉमा दिया है. Just like many others. Like honestly, every time, like I remember I was just watching, I think on Reels, and I think someone had posted like a few clips of Ashutosh sir, in Raz and in Sangharsh, and
Yeah. Oh my
मेरी
God.
I was like terrified when I saw that. I was like, oh my God. I mean, it's just marvelous how you as artists, because what you represented as an artist in your works, what he represented in his earlier works are
Yeah.
completely polar opposites.
Yeah. Yeah. In
Um,
fact, a lot of people were very worried when I got married to him. हमारी पूजा भाभी की शादी दुश्मन से हो रही है.
and lo and behold, दुश्मन की जो हीरोइन है वो आपकी फिल्म में काम भी कर रही है. In like
हाँ, exactly.
non-serious.
It was a full circle. Tanvi Azmi, Kajol,
Yeah,
you
actually
know,
true.
yeah.
Oh, it's insane. No, seriously, it's insane.
Yeah.
But I think what was really beautiful, especially about that time of television, which I think Pakistan has really genuinely done very well, is that sense of maturity, of emotional
Mm,
maturity, a sense
mm.
of human interest, soft touches that I
Stories. Yes.
Darshan back in the day, even when you were part of Shah Rukh Khan's show Circus,
It's circus. Yeah.
that even that kind of used to have as well. Article, I feel like it's become very saturated, and I think like films, people are busy making products rather than actually stories.
So
So,
true.
how concerned, Renuka ma'am, are you? And as someone who obviously has a certain power because you can write and you can direct,
Yeah.
of course you can do, how do you think we can kind of go back and reignite that passion for actual storytelling rather than product making?
Uh, where television is concerned, unfortunately, when the daily soap, uh, I would say, factory started, at that time we thought that it was going to be just a phase because we were still doing weeklies at that time.
Yes.
I was doing Kora Kagaz when actually
Oh
Kyunki
yeah,
Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi,
yeah. I remember.
yeah, hit the screens. And we said ki yes, it's very interesting because now you get that, story every day. So you want to see and you're very attracted to that format and, of the daily. And I thought that it will run its course and, people will never tire of weeklies, basically, because that was the norm for so many years. But I was proved wrong, and the space for weeklies just stopped because people, अब आपने reel दे दी 30 second की, so now people are getting irritated if something doesn't happen in 30 seconds.
Hmm.
Now that can't be the rule for a television or for a feature film or for a web series, right? They're different story formats. So I think what happened with television was that people just that hook that comes every evening, so that people come the next day. They just got hooked onto that hook, and they wanted to know what happened to the characters. And once you get invested in the characters, then you want to know what happens as soon as possible. So I think that ek wo, I did not expect that the daily soap would just take over our industry. And I think what comes with the daily soap format is that you just have to keep churning things out. You have no time to pause and think and, kind of work out the character arcs, work out the story arcs in a way that they're almost like doctors who will give you medication only so much so that a little bit of your illness will be cured, but you will keep coming back.
Hmm.
They won't cure you completely. So if you satisfy them in 13 episodes, why would they want to see a serial running for 1 year, 2 years, now 10 years, 11 years? But the shows are just running for, that amount of time now. So I think that put a death to the creativity that was a norm in television. And that's the saddest thing because I think television is one of the biggest ways that one can change a society.
Hmm.
And now, because there is no thought behind it and everything is about TRP and whatever you dish out, you want to just be the lowest common denominator so that jaldi ho jaye and it just looks very fashionable and everything. But there's nothing real. There's nothing. Nobody's solving real problems or real issues. Very rarely. I'm not saying nobody does that.
Hmm.
So that social change aspect is completely lost because earlier there were progressive stories on television that made an impact and changed people's lives and the way they led them. But now no such thing happens. So now it's on to television, films, to educate, to be a part of the social change, and it's really, if you look at the 80s and 90s Hindi films, early, not late 90s, but early 90s, yeah, very early 90s and late 80s and early 80s. The films were very vacuous.
Hmm.
They had no social thought, of the 60s, the 70s, which really made such a huge impact on people. But television was there to do that job. And then television lost that power and films took over. So I think that the web series also, the nuanced kind of stories that you can get on OTT today are adding to that feeling of, social change, social perspective change, and television is not doing that at all, which is sad, I think, very sad.
Yeah. But I think also I think it's about the ecosystem, isn't it? I mean it always was, but I feel even more so now. It's been about who defines the ecosystem, what the
Yes, of course.
thinks works, what ecosystem doesn't think will work. Um,
Yeah,
I think that's a very big important thing. I think so. Rather than actually, so would you? I mean, just to kind of sum up what you're saying and maybe just add a little question in it as well, is could it actually just be that it's not necessarily onuses on creatives, but more about trying to reach into the ecosystem and reaching a powerful stage of the ecosystem and then having that creative input. Would you agree with that, or
yeah.
do you think there's still power within creators to still affect the ecosystem?
No,
How?
there is still power, and one has to look at it as a sort of CSR. And, I mean, companies have been forced to do that. That apart from making money, you have to have a certain amount of money, placed aside for social service, social related subject. Something that you give back to society. So even when you're busy making money, uh, I think some part of it should be reserved for either things that make social change,
Hmm,
which is a very positive thing that any society needs. And so I think that where the channels are concerned, I would say that the onus is on them to kind of fund and mm, even if there is no TRP coming in from certain things, to support certain subjects,
hmm,
to see to it that they have their run, even if they are not making money, just to start making that point, giving a sort of bouquet, which is, that there are chrysanthemums and there are roses and there are lilies and, kisi kisi ki pasand hoga mogra, but maybe somebody might feel that it's too much smell or whatever. So they have mild smelling flowers as well in that bouquet. So there is something for everybody. So we need to at least subsidize certain, subjects of social change, maybe that have a particular creative thought where there is a beginning, there's a middle, there is an end, there is a certain structure to it, and maybe a finite series on television
hmm.
which handles these kind of things, which I think hats off production. Atish Kapadia's
Yes,
production does make stories like that. Try
they
and make stories which are, entertaining as well as breaking certain barriers, making you think. I think they have managed. I think that's because they are, very thoughtful,
hmm.
and their creativity is not just about making money. So yes, the onus rides with the creators as well as I think the channels. If the channels do say that this is certainly something that we would like to make,
Hmm.
then I'm sure that there'll be so many producers lining up to make those kind of stories, But they need to be subsidized because not everything runs.
Yeah.
But one should at least try and make certain things run because you have a responsibility to society.
And they are happening. Like I've seen a few good shows. Like for example, I watched um on Sony TV they had a very beautiful show called Patiala Babes, which came on 2 years ago. Outstanding series. Even
Yeah.
पहले ZTV पे एक बहुत अच्छी शो आई थी which was called 12/24 करोल बाग on ZTV, which
Yes,
was
yes, yes, yes.
incredible. Like so there is potential for shows to that have a balance, which is also has a commercial aspect to it as
Yeah,
well as the social aspect to it. And
correct,
we see that in
correct.
films now also, but I think the sincerity is what matters the most, I think.
Exactly, exactly.
Audience is very clever. They can sniff insincerity from a mile off in a product,
How true,
you
how
know?
true. Yes,
We see
yeah,
that why certain films haven't done well. It's quite obvious why they've not done well. Um,
exactly.
but I think on this note of social stuff, and social conversation and discourse that we're having in films and entertainment, I think two titles that you're gonna be a part of, which is Dopaya and Devmanus, uh,
Yeah,
they have. Firstly, Dopaya looks absolutely fun. I think it seems to be coming.
it's delightful.
It, coming from the world of I think like Panchayat and Lapata ladies,
Yes, yes, yes.
which is kind of where crime is non-existent, but then ek durghatna ghat.
Imagine.
So that kind of world was very interesting, which seems to me
Yes,
a complete stark opposite to what Dev Manush is, which seems to
completely. Yes,
a complete thrill. It's again rooted, but
yeah,
again different worlds. For you, Renuka,
yeah.
to be a part of I don't want to use the word rural because it just sounds so
Hmm.
but the heartland world of India,
Yes,
but yet with
yes,
different voices. How have how has that really, number one, I guess, affected your perspective of the lives of people there and understanding and being a bit more connected rather than just be,
yes,
I think you've been connected anyway, but how do you think it's
yes.
reinforced that?
I think that, after I got married to Ranaji, the first time that I stepped um, onto a village sort of situation. I'd never been to a village, imagine. Born and brought up in Mumbai. So my even my grandparents and we had homes in Pune, so another city. So there was no chance for me to go except there was this film called Aboli which I did where we went and we shot in an Adivasi setting. I was playing an Adivasi girl. So
Wow.
that was the only time then where I actually stepped onto a village ground sort of, and I got to know the village life. Their way of life is, of course, very, very typical and particular to
Mm,
that Adivasi colony. So, but yes, once I kind of got to know the world of my in-laws, it opened my eyes to a very, very different way of living. And I think it only makes you a better human being. It makes you more inclusive of many more thought processes than what maybe you carry just as a city person,
mm,
you know. And yes, you get the idea that there are so many Indias that you're living in. And those so many Indias are at different times in the time cycle. There are some which are actually somewhere in the 1900s, and there are others that, are early 2000s. And it's like that, basically, that there are certain parts of city life that uh, have never traveled to a village at all. So how would the people there experience that at all? So when you're playing a person from the village, um, you have to unlearn certain ways of being, you know, that there are certain gestures and there are certain things that are very, very city urban that you have to get rid of. And also the dialect, you have to work on the dialect. Here we are, kind of Bihar based. So we had a language trainer coming in to train all of us with the language, and it's so specific. And of course, there's a Hindi Bihari mixture, but even then, I had never spoken that uh, dialect. So it was great to kind of delve into it and, kind of be that character for that period of time. So I think it's a very, very quirky. You have these really quirky characters that are played by so many talented actors in Dupahiya, and the script written by Avinash Dwivedi and Chirag Garg is outstanding. I mean, I fell in love with Dupahiya at the script level itself. And then, of course, Sonam Nair was a brilliant director to work with. So, all in all, being with that kind of cast, again, an ensemble cast, was also lovely. But playing rural characters, you have to, as a city person, you have to unlearn a lot of things, which I think you have to catch yourself sometimes doing certain things which are very, very, shahri, and you have to and there's a certain innocence in all the characters in Dupahiya, which I think a city makes you very street smart, you
mm.
know. Uh, so there is a certain innocence about the characters in Dupahiya, which is something that you have to remind yourself about. And maybe I had to go back to the 90s to remind myself
Oh, nice.
of the days of innocence.
Yeah, 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 of course, of course. I think for Sonam as well, it's a stark difference. I mean, I love Sonam. I think she's incredible and she's a wonderful
Yeah,
human being as well, honestly. And
absolutely.
sort of seeing the worlds that she had, I think from Gippy and Masaba
Yeah,
to this, it's a
yeah.
complete polar
Yeah,
opposite.
yeah, and even that series she did for Z, which had that Idea Mirza, that was also a very
Oh yeah,
different
was
kind
it
of
Kafir? Kafir
series.
it was called, no? Kafir, I think it.
Yes, Kafir,
Yeah.
correct. So Sonam is a brilliant director. you know.
Huh.
So she was a dream to work with, really.
Incredible. No, I can't wait.
Yeah.
But
Dupahiya,
yeah,
7th March, and then Devmanus is rural Maharashtra, which is much more something that I'm familiar with,
Act Two,
you
yeah.
know, because even though I've not lived in rural Maharashtra, I have experienced it through, watching, reading, so that I'm much more familiar with that space. But of course, it's a very, very intense sort of story, thriller. It was lovely working with Tejas Deoskar again. He was the director of Bucket List. I had already
Oh
worked with
yes,
him
of
before.
course. Yes.
Yeah, so that was wonderful. And this is the first time I worked with Mahesh Manjrekar. He's also an intense actor to work with. And in fact, the entire cast is extremely good. So that's coming on the 25th of April. So another thing to look forward to.
All right, look, I know the teaser had just released, and I know NDAs, वगैरह वगैरह, contractual duties, हमारी जान लेती. If you could tell us a little bit, because from what I mean, this is also Love Ranjan's like first
Love Ranjan.
piece
Yes,
production. I mean, he did such a
yes,
did a great job with Vad, which again sort of
yes,
spoke about, a crime story, and that too with very senior sort of characters.
yes. Actually, it's so interesting that senior actors are given lead roles.
Yeah,
And
great.
I'm just pleased about that,
I love
because
that.
that, yeah, it's I think with the onset of OTT, I think that it's become more widespread now. It's become more acceptable. Earlier, unless you had a lead pair which was like young, then, of course, the character actors would have brilliant roles and stuff like that. But the main leads had to be of a certain age. Now you can have films with main leads who are, of the older generation, post 50s, and they do very well also. So that's something which is so heartening for people of my age, isn't it?
Oh,
But yes,
yeah.
everybody's saying things about it, but yes, NDA, so I can't really disclose anything. I can only say that um, the use of that rural Maharashtra and the Varkari, people that are shown in the film, where both Mahesh Manjrekar and my characters are Varkaris who believe in Vitthal, Pandharpur, and we do that incredible Wari every year, which comes in, Ashadi Ekadashi, which is around August, end of July, August. So it's that, and there is a whole thought system behind people who are Warkaris, which I think is very, very. It's a very deep thought. It's a very, very beautiful way of living life, and Dev Manus will give people an idea of that, which I am very excited about.
But it looks very intense. Is it
It
intense?
is. It is. It is intense. It is intense. In fact, Tejas always jokes and says, "Oh, Renuka smiled in this shot. Oh, Renuka smiled," because I'm given no scenes in which I can smile or kind of do my normal thing.
I think it's so wonderful. I think it's this smile that has genuinely, paved your way into our hearts. I think genuinely. I think
Oh,
when I
thank
first saw you, and
you,
I just literally when we started this conversation, just that small smile was beautiful. I think honestly, so
thank
literally
you,
smiling. I think it's a very beautiful thing. Um,
thank you.
I think on a final note before we wrap up, um, it would be nice to know, have you actually considered stepping into the seat as a director again? What sort of story would you like to
Yeah,
explore now going forward?
I'm writing a black comedy.
Oh wow. I
And
wasn't
this time,
expecting that.
it's not about women. Sorry.
I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah. And in fact, I just wrote, produced, and directed Marathi animation short that's doing the festival rounds right now. It's called Dhavpatti in Marathi, and the English title is Loop Line. So it, in fact, it got the best animation award at Tasveer South Asian Film Festival,
Oh,
which is the only Oscar qualifying film South Asian Film Festival in the United States, and it also got an honorary mention for best narrative short. And so I'm very pleased And people are very surprised that I've, kind of turned from live action to animation. But animation has always been part of the magic of, you know, filmmaking. It
Mm.
was in a way the beginning of filmmaking. And that's where we got the 24 frames per second,
Wow.
So, yeah, so it's a kind of my salute to animation animators. And also because in India, um, animation is still considered something for children, to be seen by children. You know, that whole world of adult uh, stories told through animation is still not a norm in India.
Mm.
So I wanted to do something which was like different. And this particular story that I started writing, I could only see it in animation.
Mm.
And it's an 8 minute, 18-second film. And it is doing well. So maybe this year, by the end of the festival circuit, I'll think of releasing it someplace. I don't know where. But that's something that I did meanwhile. And I was busy writing this black comedy, as I was telling you. And this time it's not about women. It has mostly men characters. So
Mm.
that'll be something different for me.
And will it be in Hindi, I guess?
Hindi. This is Hindi.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll
Yeah.
be well, that's going to be a very good conversation for us to have near the time. And it's interesting you mentioned about
Yeah.
animation because I watched a film called Bombay Rose. That
Ah, Gitanjali Rao. I'm such a huge fan of hers.
she did a really good job. I mean, I thought the story,
Yeah,
I mean, quite critically, if I'm honest, I thought the story was a bit outdated, but I loved the way she used animations to kind of tell that story.
absolutely.
As a mature way, I
She's,
thought that was a good move.
yeah. She's lovely. She's lovely.
Incredible. Wow, Renuka ma'am, I think we've covered it pretty much all. We've gone from Hum Aapke Hain Koun to Hum Aapke Hain, essentially
Yeah,
this whole entire sphere, and it's been wonderful to literally hear your insights. And I think we're so lucky that there's so many wonderful creatives and experienced artists like you in this industry currently, and I think we must
thank you.
very celebrate that. So thank you so much for joining me on Film.
Thank you. Thank you, Anuj. It was
Thank
lovely speaking to you. Bye
you.
bye.
You.